so happy we alive.
National Institute of Health study published by the Institute of Medicine in 1999 has said that marijuana should be available and has medicinal benefit. And but yet our government persists in making it illegal. In fact, we can't even have hemp products because of the vague similarities between hemp and marijuana. But so we continue to vilify and make illegal marijuana, which has been shown to be useful in a variety of diseases such as muscle wasting diseases, chronic pains, nausea, vomiting, wasting syndrome from AIDS. It's an appetite stimulant. It helps a variety of mood disorders, glaucoma, and so forth. Over 100 well-documented medical conditions that benefit from the use of marijuana. Now, on the lighter side of this, there is a drug called Marinol, that's produced by Savoy Pharmaceuticals, that is synthetic tetrahydrocannabinol, which is one of the several dozen active ingredients found in inhaled marijuana. And it is available for use as a drug in the treatment of nausea and vomiting. It costs $14 a dose, lasts for 6 to 8 hours, but it's not very useful in the context of someone who has nausea and vomiting. They need immediate relief to get control over their nausea and vomiting, and this oral preparation just isn't available taken orally for the treatment of nausea and vomiting. In fact, a study showed that 87% of the people who take this drug have none of it detectable in their blood even 2 hours later. So, but
yeah, I haven't heard anything good about it.
But this drug is so safe; it's a Schedule III drug, like Tylenol with codeine, and it's even considered safe to use in pregnancy. So that argues for the safety factor of tetrahydrocannabinol, one of the active ingredients in marijuana. And like I said, everybody that's looked at it has said that it has medical utility, it has safety in medical applications, and should be available, but the DEA and FDA continue to prohibit it.
Is there a historical precedent to the use of marijuana in OBGYN type birthing? And
well, historically it's been used to relieve pain of labor and nausea and vomiting in pregnancy. Widely used. And it's been used as an inhaled substance for several hundred years. It's been around for perhaps 10,000 years in use in different capacity. And it's even argued by religious scholars that Christ used it for anointing oils.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So it's been around for a very long time. In 1988, DEA's chief administrative law judge was a guy named Francis Young, who heard testimony brought by a National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws. Chief administrative law judge for the DEA in 1980 was a guy named Francis Young, who heard testimony on a suit brought by a National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Law to reschedule marijuana so that it could be used for medicinal purposes. And he heard 2 years of testimony, reviewed 15 volumes of evidence, and he said, and I'm going to paraphrase this just a little bit, but that under medical supervision, marijuana is one of the safest drugs ever, and safer than many of the foods that we consume. And for DEA to keep it from people in need was specious. In other words, really bad, and no argument for it. And to argue that it sends a signal to children that's wrong is an invalid argument. And so he ruled in favor of normal, and DEA went on and took it to the next level of appeal and so forth, and it eventually went to U.S. district courts where normal was ruled in favor of. DEA continued to stonewall it, and they were able to get away with that because in the final analysis they said, well, the governmental bureaucratic chief should be able to have the final say on this. So even though they were ruled against, they got to keep their little law that marijuana should not be available for medical use. So what has happened then in the meantime since 1988, there have been, last year there were 643,000 arrests for marijuana use in the United States, almost all of them for simple possession. There were 1,650,000 drug violation arrests last year. And, you know, we simply can't incarcerate our way out of this mess.
What's the economic impact of the war on drugs and the criminalization of marijuana?
Well,
at the practical level,
you have to look at the whole picture, really. And I'll speak with respect to Indiana alone. It's the largest line item in the Indiana state budget. Indiana budgets between 10 and 15 billion dollars a year for the state budget. About between 5 and 6 billion dollars of that operating budget comes from the federal government. It's funneled directly into programs like Head Start, Medicaid, and so forth. But about between 10 and 11 billion dollars a year that the Indiana government spends for Indiana programs. There's 21,000 prisoners in Indiana jails, both city, county, and local and state jails. And 20% of them are in jail for nonviolent drug offenses. Now, if you look at the true cost of incarceration, now the jail bed itself costs about $25,000, $26,000 a year, but that doesn't occur in a vacuum. You got to be arrested, prosecuted, and taken through courts, and then you're incarcerated. And that true cost of that, which most people don't understand, is over $78,000 per year per inmate.
Holy cow!
Now, if you do the math,
that's a lot.
It's a lot of money, and this is, now keep in mind, this is for nonviolent drug crime. So these are people whose behavior at worst annoys us.
Yeah.
And if you believe in the law of natural consequences, which is a truly libertarian thing, is if I put drugs into my body, which I don't use drugs at all, I don't use caffeine, or I don't smoke anything, I don't use alcohol, stimulants, sedatives, hypnotics, I don't use laxatives, I don't use any of that stuff. But I don't care if you do. And your use of it doesn't threaten me. And my use of substances is no threat to you, nor is it, if an individual uses these drugs, nor is no threat to society. It is no threat to society. But we're spending so much money. If you do the math on all these people that we have in jail for these nonviolent drug offenses, it's over $600 million a year, just in Indiana.
Whoa!
Now and that doesn't include the federal prisoners.
$600 million?
$600 million a year. Now, that's to incarcerate, that's to persecute, prosecute, and incarcerate drug offenders. And it's $78,000 a year. Outpatient drug treatment, drug rehab, if you will, is around $4,000 to $5,000 a year. $73,000 per person less money. And that's if you feel, I mean, even if you can argue that all these people should undergo treatment. But I submit to you the following. What is the true, now why do people use drugs? You know, have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I have.
And the answer is people use drugs because they're addicted, or because they want to escape, or they want to relieve some suffering. Whatever it is, pain, nausea, vomiting. And so those are the basic reasons why people take drugs. But if you look at addiction rates, and I think this is really an important issue, there's a measurable addiction rate to marijuana, and it's 9%. Estimated, again, by the Institute of Medicine through the National Institutes of Health. Addiction rate, and this is for all users ever. And keep in mind that about 80 million Americans have smoked marijuana.